Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to the Rantin review here on the YouTubes. We're talking today about AEW Dynamite from this past week, featuring a bunch of title matches, 3 title matches. The whole show kind of felt like a pay-per-view. However, before we get to any of that, if you guys enjoy content like this on the channel, be sure to hit that like button with a very, very stiff thrust kick to the face and turn it blue and sad, lying on the mat, looking like they're dead. But if you can do that, I definitely appreciate it because it helps the YouTube algorithm let other people know who like AEW that I do videos about it. So I appreciate it very much. Thanks for the help with the channel. So this edition of Dynamite, like I said, it felt kind of like a pay-per-view edition, which is a back-to-back thing because last week's edition had the Blood and Guts match, which felt like a pay-per-view brand show, and this week we got the whole bunch of different. We got some pretty good stuff on the show. Starting out with Yuji Nagata against the IWGP United States Heavyweight Champion, if I can get that out, Jon Moxley. And this was a very New Japan style of match. We got to see Moxley's Death Rider sort of character in AEW against Yuji Nagata, who also last time he was on this network was when WCW existed. So this was like a lot of things like New Japan and WCW and AEW and WWE and CZW all kind of coming together in this 10 plus minute match, which was actually pretty good. Now Yuji Nagata, for those of you who don't follow New Japan too much, you know, he's one of the dads, as we call them in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's one of the third generation older wrestlers. They have him as kind of on the opening matches on the card, either wrestling the Young Lions or, you know, wrestling other old timers. And occasionally they'll put him into a feud with one of the main roster guys, main event guys, or one of the upper mid card guys. But Nagata still can go. He's always been able to go. And he went in here and had a pretty damn good stiff match with Jon Moxley. It was great to see. Moxley eventually did get the win and retained the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship, which helps a lot of things. It gets the title on TV. There actually is a title defense of this U.S. Championship, so it doesn't just disappear like it has for the last year or so. And we get to see a different side of Moxley come out here on AEW television. And these are, again, just the seeds of, you know, some bigger things coming down the road between AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling. I like the partnership the way they have it right now, although we still haven't seen any big name guys from New Japan show up in AEW. I mean, Kenta, I guess, you know, Kenta usually got our big name guys from the past. Kenta, the big name from another promotion. They're significant names, but they're not any of the big 4 or what's rapidly becoming the big 6 in New Japan right now. So we're still waiting to see Naito and Okada, the Okada confrontation with Kenny Omega, and even some of the comedy things like Yano and Orange Cassidy. I'm still begging the wrestling gods to give me a match between Toru Yano and Orange Cassidy. I need it. Speaking of Orange Cassidy, later on in the evening, he had the #1 contender match against Pac. The winner would go on to face Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing for the AEW World Championship. This match was as good as the one that they had last year at Revolution, which is still one of the greatest pay-per-views of the last year. And this time, Pac was a little bit more wise to Orange Cassidy's shenanigans and brutalized the crap out of Orange Cassidy to the point that it went a little bit too far. At one point in the match, Orange Cassidy gets a stiff thrust kick to the head. I'm sure Bret Hart was having flashbacks of his match with Goldberg. I mean, that's serious stuff. I mean, that ended Bret Hart's career. And here we got Pac hitting Orange Cassidy with a stiff thrust kick to the face. Orange looked like he was out. I mean, I thought he was selling. Well, that wasn't selling. He was out. And then, on top of that, Pac picks him up and gives him a Liger Bomb, which looked nasty as hell. And then afterwards, you see Aubrey Edwards checking on him. Pac checked on him, and they kind of rolled him out of the ring. And then there was an audible called, which was actually kind of good work on AEW's part. And in hindsight, they sent Kenny and Don Callis out there to kind of ad-lib a spot where Kenny would hit Pac in the back of the head. Pac would lay down, and there would be a double 10 count. Now, apparently, the story was supposed to be that Pac and Orange Cassidy would go to a time limit draw, and then you would get the same thing with Kenny Omega coming out and saying that he didn't have a challenger. Shivani comes out and informs him that no, Tony Khan says that there will be a triple threat match, which I heard a lot of AEW haters getting on, like, oh, it's just like WWE. It's like, oh my God. Every time somebody does a triple threat match, WWE does not own triple threat matches. You can do a triple threat match once in a blue moon. The problem with WWE, for a lot of fans, is that WWE does them all the time. How many times there's a WrestleMania pay-per-view or a big match pay-per-view, a triple threat match? We've seen it over. They just did it for WrestleMania this year. So that's why it gets associated with WWE a lot, but WWE does not own the triple threat match. In fact, I don't even think they came up with the triple threat match. I think other companies invented it. But anyway, that was the outcome. I did love Kenny Omega's just kind of goofy nonsense that he was babbling. Like, you don't know me. You don't know me. I was like, what the? Kenny is tripping me out, man. I am loving this new hyper cleaner, as I'm going to call him, I guess. He's just nuts. And it's freaking funny as hell. But, I love it. This is the evolution of that cleaner character. This is not the modest Kenny Omega that we saw up until last December in AEW. This is his former New Japan gimmick adjusted for American audiences. And so far, I like it. I know a lot of people don't, because a lot of people are butthurt about a lot of things. But for me, personally, I don't have a personal gripe against Kenny Omega, so I dig it. There were a couple of really good interview segments on this show. Brit Baker had an amazingly good interview with Jim Ross. How far she has come from about a year or so ago when she was kind of rambling through her promos, and now she is crisp and succinct and is getting across that DMD thing. She's really come along very, very well, being on national television now in just a year, and she is the star of the division. I think most people think that Shida's going to drop the belt. Shida's held the AEW Women's Championship for over a year now. It probably is time for her to drop the belt to Brit Baker so we can get news stories in the women's division. And, there's a little shooting work in Brit's promo that, she is the face of the women's division, being Brit Baker, and Shida's held it on life support, but now it's time for it to get its pulse back. The Inner Circle had a run-in or a drive-in on the Pinnacle celebration of their victory at Blood and Guts, and they pulled out an old WWE. Now, this was something that you could legitimately say they stole this from WWE. There was this angle with a little bit of the bubbly being used to spray all of the Pinnacle guys in the ring. We saw Stone Cold Steve Austin famously did that with the beer truck against Vince McMahon, and then Kurt Angle did it with the milk truck. We've seen this before. That is a WWE gimmick. So that is perfectly valid. But it kind of worked for this because Chris Jericho having a little bit of the bubbly, it kind of worked. It's kind of become a trope in wrestling now. Other companies have done it too, so it is what it is. They could have come up with something else, but overall, that didn't really damage the segment for me any more than it damages a segment in WWE when some guy does a move that we see from another wrestler. If they do it once, not if they do it over and over again. But, if I see somebody pull out, a Rainmaker in WWE, I go like, oh, that's like Okada, but it doesn't ruin the rest of the match between Gargano and Ciampa. So, it is what it is. But that segment was pretty good. The Pinnacle rising up. Of course, the outcome of this is now that they're challenging without Santana, which I haven't looked up what's going on with Santana yet. Maybe he's injured. I don't know. But MJF challenged the Inner Circle to a Stampede match, much as like they had last year. On a pay-per-view, and if the Inner Circle does not win, then the Inner Circle has to disband. I don't want the Inner Circle to disband. I think the Inner Circle is perfect the way they are, together the way they are. I think you need to focus a little bit more on some of the other wrestlers. I thought that's kind of what they were leaning towards anyways, taking Jericho out of the Inner Circle for a while and having Sammy and Santana, Ortiz, and Hager kind of do their own thing, and then have the eventual triumphant return of Jericho. This feels a little bit rushed. And I'm kind of wondering what. Well, we know why, because they were trying to pop a rating. But the Blood and Guts match should be what we're going to for a Double or Nothing. This seems like they rushed this, so I don't want them rushing this feud. This feud has been very, very good. They should have. Now seeing what the plan was, I'd rather them had saved Blood and Guts for Double or Nothing and then gone to the Stampede match as something to be on Dynamite. I think that probably would have been a better way. But this is me backseat booking. I'm not booking the show, so it's what AEW chose, but doesn't feel quite right in my opinion, but of course, that's just my opinion. You guys might have a different one. The Young Bucks defended the AEW Tag Team titles against SCU, Frankie Kazarian, and Christopher Daniels. Daniels, unfortunately, on Twitter has said this might be it for him. I don't think so. But this was a great tag team match. I love this tag team match. This was an ROH. This is ROH circa late 2000s special on this thing, and they pulled out everything. They put out a lot of callbacks to some of the matches they've had before. I loved it. Daniels, after I did notice something too on this show. There was a lot of bleeding, which is and there was a lot of mocking of WWE, which again is probably in response to WWE saying that AEW and the Blood and Guts match had set wrestling back 30 years. Which I don't mind, because 30 years ago there were way more people watching wrestling, and wrestling was way more entertaining then than what's going on now. But hey, if AEW setting wrestling back to the time when actually everybody really liked it, good. But outside of that, Daniels was bleeding, and Moxley was bleeding. We had a lot of blood on the show. So they were kind of like, hold my beer. And then in a later part of the match, after Daniels bled all over the place, you had Matt Jackson mocking the Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, "I'm sorry, I love you" super kick, because he kind of knew he was getting rid of Christopher Daniels. Because again, the stipulation has been for several months now that if SCU lost another match as a tag team, they would split as a tag team. They fought their butts off, and I thought this was a great match. SCU did go down. They did lose the match. It took everything the Young Bucks had, but the Young Bucks retained the tag titles. SCU is over with. But then AEW did something that I personally thought was a big mistake. You didn't get the quiet moment of, which you usually would get in this in any company, where, the bad guys leave the ring, and then we just had Kazarian and Christopher Daniels in the ring, and then just let the announcers be quiet and just let the moment play out and let the moment breathe. Instead, they cut to a backstage shot of Jon Moxley crapping on their gear and with Eddie Kingston or whatever, and then went to commercial. And then they came back and showed it from commercial. I think that was a missed opportunity, in my opinion. I personally would have liked to have seen them give Kazarian and Daniels that quiet moment in the ring to have that final, applause from the audience. But, again, AEW is not perfect. They set up a lot of good stuff, and sometimes they miss it. So, they've had a couple of those this year, but again, nobody's perfect. It is getting to a point, though, that I'm starting to see, and even myself, I'm kind of going, you guys are slipping up a little bit too much now. Maybe kind of take a break and kind of rein things in a little bit. Maybe that's the key. In the main event, we had the TNT Championship defended by Darby Allin against Miro. I think a lot of us expected this to be the end of Darby Allin's really wonderful Bret Hart-esque kind of run with the TNT Championship. He defended that title every single week in some really brutal matches for him. And Miro came in and picked up the bones. And much like the character Chong Li, which he emulated in his Twitch stream and he loves, and he's kind of mapped his character around, which, if you don't know, that's the bad guy from Bloodsport, the Jean-Claude Van Damme 1987 karate movie Bloodsport, who also was the guy that played Bolo in Enter the Dragon. And Miro has said that he's modeled his character after that, and even the way the character dresses. So, knowing that, this is perfect for Miro. Miro did have a message for his detractors saying, is he underwhelming now as he's ragdolling the crap out of Darby Allin? And then, as Allin tried to come back, he had some good offense. They surprisingly made it believable. The double drop kick to the ribs, it was plausible that may injure Miro, and Miro sold it very well. And Darby was literally hurling his body at Miro just to get anything against this big brute. He got a little bit on him, but at the end of the day, of course, it was Miro who came out with the win. The really cool moment in this is that there's a part where Darby Allin is on the ropes and Miro's just standing over him, and he looks over at Sting, and Sting looks over at him, and there's kind of like this acknowledgement between the two of them. They're like, you're going to lose this match. And they fist bump. And Sting's like, yeah, you're going to lose. And they're like, all right, well, I'm going to go out swinging, and they fist bump. That was so good. Again, it's little things like that. Sometimes they get gems like that, and then other times, like the Kazarian SCU thing with Christopher Daniels, they miss opportunities. But this was a great one. Darby Allin has to tap out. The match stops, and Miro is your new champion. Then we get a bunch of run-ins to set up a tag match for Darby Allin and Sting against Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. But then, what was really interesting to me is the Murder Hawk Monster comes out, which is now explains why he was tied up with Darby and Sting in this whole thing. Jake Robertson trying to hold him back, but Lance Archer wants a piece of Miro, and Miro's like, come on, bring it. And I'm like, come on, bring that. Put that on Double or Nothing. That is, for again, it's kind of funny. I think years ago, people used to complain about AEW being a bunch of vanilla midgets. We got two massive brutes here. Two of the biggest power wrestlers in the business over the last 5 to 10 years. Lance Archer, who's tore it up over in the East. Miro, who tore it up over in WWE. Now they're going to go face head-to-head and kind of another one of these matches that I didn't know I wanted to see until I saw it booked, and now I'm like, yeah, I want to see that. So overall, outside of some missed opportunities here and there, I thought this was a really good edition of AEW Dynamite. They need to, it feels like they're kind of moving too fast, though. For me as an audience member, I think they need to slow it down a little bit so they don't miss some of these things and let some of these things breathe a little bit. We literally have sat through 2 pay-per-view quality cards over the last 2 weeks. But then again, the 2 or 3 Dynamites before that were kind of like, they had like the B-list guys on there for the weeks before that. So I don't know, but they popped a rating last week. They were number 1 in cable television on that Wednesday night. So we'll see what the ratings are today when they come out. But I think, once again, AEW, there's still going to be detractors. There's still going to be AEW haters who hate on the company. Again, it's not my favorite wrestling company, but I do appreciate what they're doing, and I wish any wrestling company success. There are more wrestling companies that make a lot of money, where wrestlers can go and make a lot of money, and I have to be under one person's vision of what wrestling is, and I will continue to say this until I stop watching wrestling. It's a good thing. Thank you guys for checking out this edition of the Rant and Review and our review of AEW Dynamite. I will be doing more in the future. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and definitely check down in the description box. I got a lot of free goodies for you guys down there. Free Amazon Prime memberships, Audible. You can get free stocks for some of the links below, free crypto, all kinds of goodies down in the description box below. I'll see you guys next time for more news and reviews here on the Rant and Review. Have a good day.